wanted to explain, I think it's already been said, probably in one of these dialogues. And then Zen and I have talked about it as well, that there's this sort of underlying theme in the Zen world, at least, that you're not supposed to talk about it. And so, just to be clear, I made a conscious decision to talk about it, this underlying experience, because really, like if you wanted to know Coven, for example, it's what he was talking about, this topic that I raised past couple days. He did it in his own way. And the reason I elaborated on that experience is because it's talked about quite a bit in Buddhist teachings, various teachers. Sometimes it's a little hidden, under there. I'm talking about the ancients, not so much contemporary teachers. But just to give you a little flavor of, I'm just going to read something out of a Dzogchen text. Just short thing you'll kind of see that it's talking about the same bit. So this is out of the middle of something, but we are spontaneously realized, so there is nothing for us to practice. We live without being distracted, so there is nothing for us to meditate. To be a self is a crime. There is nowhere for us to travel. Our true natures are as clear as the sky. We are ornamented by the beauty of a shining wisdom. Non-dual great bliss is spontaneously realized. It is stamped with 3 seals. It is not possible that it change. That is what he said from the Tantra on the light that brings us all together. This is chapter 7. The difference between delusion and non-delusion. See, it's a little different way of speaking about this topic. But I want to talk, so I'm trying to establish the ground, and there's a lot of pieces to this. We talked about integration and so on, but to continue that conversation, I want to say that something about perception. So there's something about looking for your vantage point. So typically we're pretty comfortable being human beings, and we have our stresses and things we have to deal with, but we're familiar with it. And the question becomes, like, really, who or what are you? So there's one view that says we're a body of light. You can see it individually or collectively, like this is a body of light, as well as experiencing it as for yourself, your sense of individual, but also as simply that, a body of light with no particular self attached to it, which is what I was trying to describe yesterday. And the other is to just experience space with no particular attribute to it, neither light nor dark, just vast, limitless space, not void, but spaciousness, I guess. And then as a human, having to deal with our needs and how to function in the human realm. I mean, it's really coming down from that. That's the integration part. Excuse me. Sorry, Manzo. Um, but before we talk about being human, I wanted to bring up one thing. Look in this book. This is that same language. And this is talking about going from unmanifest to manifest. Then our king, total awareness, gave instruction on the difference between objects and minds. All of the dharmas that do appear and that are possible are developments of delusional minds and habitual patterns. For this reason, the many kinds of craving we have for appearances are not established in any essential object. This is why appearances are walls of delusion. Now then, hearts who have gathered, listen. While on the level of total light, our way is that of pleasure in which nothing is there. We are endowed with all our markings and exemplary features. The ultimate truth has no true nature. So the Buddha knows all the dharmas that are great. His disciples perceive him to be an embodiment of pleasure that is for the audience. When the Buddhas among the bodhisattvas look up to the great perfection of the Yang Ti, they do not perceive any heart of sure intent. If due to our basic ignorance we work on our own stress, our embodiment of the Dharma is obstructed. For these reasons, we are not proper Buddhists. But this, like when you read this type of talk, it's also called Mahāti. It's like the highest level of yoga, and it's really through the Vajrayana tradition. So in other parts, they're actually putting down the lower levels of practice. Kind of like you don't, and it's also considered um, spontaneous awakening. So it's not sequential, something leading up. So it's very much aligned with Shikanta's style. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is this. We've talked about it some on that Monday study group, but it's about the three bodies. So there's Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. I, I hope you've heard of them before. They're Dharmakaya is somewhat what I was describing, this place of just primordial light, no attribute to it other than luminosity. And then Sambhogakaya is more etheric realm where beings start to appear. And Nirmanakaya is this realm that we're in, which is manifest Buddhas. They're all interpenetrating as well. And they're all like circulating through this space right now. So it's not something distant that's far away. It's everything, and it's now here. And part of what we're doing when we're sitting is this complete breakdown of this construct of self that we've put together. So even if even if you don't think you're doing it, it's happening to you. This kind of permeability develops in that construct, and it's just a matter of knowing where you're going, or knowing what happens when it falls apart, which is why it's described in these types of texts, so that there's no fear involved, and that it's okay to let that go. And as this develops, this kind of openness, I was feeling it today. I was walking around, and there's like, you feel something in your crown chakra, or your forehead chakra rather, that when you sit, it develops. That's why a lot of times Buddha or Manjushri has that dot right here. It's the energy that forms out of sitting, and you can use that as a guide to how to maintain it. Like you check in and you feel that spot as you're moving. In this last sit, I just sat like I'm sitting now, and I was just looking down. Sitting zazen upright isn't the only way to sit. And it's really about knowing, becoming familiar with the language of these broader realm that we're in, and allowing the permeability so that you can experience your true nature, just to allow it to open. But sometimes it means there's a kind of breaking down, falling apart piece that can make people a little nervous. Hold on to. Don't hold on too tight. And don't construct something else that's saying, I'm going to this place. So you have to dispense with thinking your way into things, and let go of thinking, and just be in awareness. This is a fellow I went to see. We did a workshop with him talking about Ati, which is um, Dzogchen. Luminosity in Ati, as well as in other tantras and the scriptures of the third turning, refers to the vivid, lucid brilliance and splendor of the objects of enlightened perception. These are the objects of indivisible form emptiness as presented in the Heart Sutra. The essence of phenomenon and mind is emptiness, but this is not void and nothingness. It is awareness that can accommodate all the phenomenon of samsaric delusion and suffering and the blissful kayas and wisdoms of nirvana. As such, it is called emptiness, possessing all the supreme aspects. Luminosity can be divided into three aspects corresponding to the three kayas. First, there is the subtle luminosity of Dharmakaya awareness abiding within itself. This is experienced by all beings as the wisdom of the moment of death. If they recognize it, they attain liberation in Dharmakaya. Usually, they cannot see how all phenomena are contained within it, and they continue to the lower levels of the bardo. Second, there is the non-dual luminosity of Sambhogakaya experienced by bodhisattvas and partially glimpsed by ordinary beings on the path through the Guru's blessings. Flashes of non-dual insight, yogic experience, and so forth. If ordinary beings glimpse it fully, they too become bodhisattvas. When the pure perception of sacred outlook is experienced, its brilliant direct fulfillment that is indivisible from the great bliss ravishes away the conceptual projects of ordinary perception. The samsaric perception and suffering of ordinary beings is also seen, and since there are no limitations of self, bodhisattvas who experience brilliant emptiness are intrinsically compassionate. Third, there is the luminosity of Nirmanakaya as it manifests for ordinary beings who have not transcended duality. Because there are little gaps in dualistic perception, the blessings of the teachers are capable of reaching them to some extent in the form of partial glimpses of the pure and true. They do not see them clearly enough to become bodhisattvas, but are able to be inspired to enter the path with some understanding of where it leads. That is possible because awareness and dharmadhatu are always real and complete, or we could not apprehend phenomenon at all, even deluded ones. Thus, when there is a temporary gap in the clouds of delusion, the actual sun of wisdom can shine through for a moment, and even ordinary beings can apprehend it. If that were not the case, enlightenment would not be possible. It's another take on the three kayas. Any questions? It's called that. Mm-hmm. The non-dual luminosity of Sambhogakaya. Mm. But one of the things that comes up, it's a little tricky because it can be misunderstood that all actions, appearances, phenomenon are coming out of this true nature. But it doesn't mean that some of it isn't diluted. I have it with me, but Long Chungpa, who's one of the big names in this stream, is I can't remember how he says it, but those elephants and something of Ati who say that everything that appears is mind are wrong. It's basically what he's saying. And it's, of course, when Lung Chengpa says something, you got to take note because he's a profound practitioner. As mind. And it's basically so, but I believe what he's pointing at is that to not misconstrue that for whatever action I take is enlightened action, because people use that and they're coming out of delusion, or it's a skewed action. So it isn't like a free ride, really. Depends on which mind you're talking about. Mind or capital M mind. Oh, he didn't really mention mind. Well, there's Sanskrit words for it. There's like sems, which is mind, and maybe masems or something like that, that's diluted mind.
Back to my question. About this last time, you also talked about thought, right? Amongst all that, highlighted halfway. Say it. I'm judging that narrative. Hacking by that is having had that experience. How do you know? Is it on a spectrum? I mean, how does one know? Back to Nirmanakaya body. One know where they were during. Or the light realm, or no, they didn't quite make Sambhogakaya.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, one thing is having a teacher. that that can tell you.
That's what I was thinking. History.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's well, they talk about mahasattvas, that's great beings, as not just simply a bodhisattva, but a mahasattva. Those Some of those people are just have a natural propensity for waking up and going deep and set their lives up to be able to do that. Or in some, like in the whole tulku system, they're looking for that child and, pull them out as a reincarnation. There's some questions, like, is it really a reincarnation, or is it just that if you were trained from birth in these studies and practices that develop that, with, but either way, I think it's a little of both. The um, it's a collective effort also. So, like, if I tell you guys this is what I experienced, it's why I'm telling you, because I want you to know that is out there. And if you read it in a book, it's kind of fantastical in a way. So, you know, I just happened to have this thing happen, and more than once. And so when I come back and read this stuff, it's sort of like, oh, the ancients are right. So it's confirming back and forth. But it's best if you have somebody to talk to about it. Coven was there, so it was easy to confer with him. I mean, he was beyond what I was experiencing. So if he could see from his perspective, but where on the line, I mean, there's information about, like, on the Bodhisattva path, there's the 10 bhumis. It's like stages on the Bodhisattva path. You can read about them. Like the 8th bhumi has been intriguing to me because it's part of it is about not backsliding. Like you're at a place where you're not going to slip off the path. And I kind of intrigued by it. I don't know if I'm at the 8th bhumi, but the concept of it. What I mean is, I don't think I'm there, but it's the concept of not backsliding ties in with, like, getting up from this seat and continuing the meditation practice. It's not really the right word, meditation, but keeping that energy field going. And, as things arise in front of me, my field of awareness, and again, see, the English language doesn't work very well because it's not mine, but I don't know how else to say it. So the field of awareness is changing, as there's movement, in a sense, right? So, I mean, it could be that I'm just still sitting in space. I'm in this zendo, and then later I'm still sitting in space, but it's changed, and now I'm in Whole Foods, going through the aisles. Seriously. I mean, um, but the imagery is changing, but the field is still hasn't moved.
Line. Awareness. Like us. Like, say more about day-to-day life. We sorry, I did. Waves.
I think it means something different. Because regardless of what you did, it's taking place in awareness. I mean, the action is occurring within this awareness. So it may feel like something is incomplete in what you did, but the complete awareness is still active. And to not lose touch with that, that's is sort of like, for a while everybody in the Buddhist world was like, gotta practice, gotta practice. And I'm like, okay, I've had enough about practice. Let's actualize something. What are we practicing for? So, but this kind of thing, actually, it does take practice. I mean, you have to, you have to, it's sort of like Renee's butterflies. You have to, I was staying with Leslie and Renee, and that Renee raises monarch butterflies, and they had hatched. They came out while I was there. It was really cool. And put your finger in front of them, and they climb onto it, and you have to walk around with this butterfly in your finger and put it on a flower. And so it's kind of like that, if you lose, like, boom, the butterfly falls off and you step on it, as you what so you have to, this isn't complete awareness, this is practice, like how to maintain this awareness of your activity without losing the awareness of the context within which this is happening, which is luminous space. That takes, sitting on the cushion's a good way to do it, but it's not the only way. Working on a table saw all day is another way of doing it. Seriously, I mean, I'm a cabinet maker, home builder. And, we've been working in the shop a lot, and I started to think, this is a really good example of mindfulness. We're on the joiner, blades. If you, I think about lunch, something happens. So it's talked about like the view, that's what I was presenting yesterday. It's like, this is the view. This is what is underlying all construed reality. But in and around that, regardless of whether that opens up and you see it or not, there's maintaining the spaciousness that develops while you sit. By the end of Sesshin, everybody's going to be going like, woo, bright eyes. And then you're driving down the freeway and somebody cuts out, hey, you fucker! So, but even that is appearing and happening within the context of this luminous space. So you just have to develop and stay with luminous space and observing what appears within it. And then as you observe, like, oh, that really wasn't the best behavior or reaction to that guy cutting me off. And you don't have to go follow him and say, I'm sorry. But you can, you can, you can recognize it and say, okay, what would be in accordance with this underlying place of luminosity? And if you want to know what those attributes are, they're all spelled out. So it's like the light of your true nature is shining and it hits a prism and boom, the paramitas, the precepts, all those things are that refracted light. And so you can go look in any book and see how you're supposed to behave. There's another aspect too, besides grace. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, good. Uh, outside I went to visit Eiheiji because it was Koben's training temple. And outside are these two, I forget what they call them in Japanese, but big, powerful figures. One, they're looking down at you, and one is saying all, and the other is saying first syllable and last syllable. And in between them, it says basically, don't even think about entering here if you are not serious about practice. And they're like, we're going to fuck you. Seriously, you look and go, I don't know if I want to go through this gate. So there's that kind of energy too, which is completely valid. It shows up it's what we were talking about, the saying no, not okay. So Vajrayana Buddhism gets into it tremendously. I mean, all kinds of energies, manifest energies. They point you at them. I haven't done it, but I have friends who have, but it comes up naturally, and you run into them. And how do you deal with them? With compassion. But you have to be settled in yourself to be able to respond that way. Okay, one last thing I want to read you. Just I don't know where we are in time or anything, but okay, this is from Uttara Tantra, which is well known, but because the perfect Buddhakaya radiates, because of suchness being inseparable, and because of possessing the Dhatu, every sentient being always possesses the very essence of Buddhahood. So really at the beginning of this, what I was trying to say is like, don't just look at this from your human vantage point, with all the entanglements and things. Sometimes you have to like turn it around and look at it from a space perspective. Or one of the Buddha bodies, something like that. So you look back at what's happening from different perspectives, so you can see in different ways what's occurring. Is our time? Oh, yes. Why do you why do you equate the two? Just out of curiosity. of it. Well, sort of like knowing things. There was one woman who was the sister of somebody who practiced at Okoji. And I knew that her was really sick with breast cancer and struggling because she had two kids in high school, much less losing her own life. Finally did pass, but uh, somehow I I would call my friend Getty and go or text her, "What's going on with your sister?" You say, "How'd you know?" It just took a turn for the worse, that kind of thing. So that's a little bit like that. Um, these other realms. That's why I say this. This is just one place where we're appearing, and it's our collective karma and intention to do so. But there's other places that also are like like this in the sense that things are happening. I don't really try and tune into it too much. I did have an experience. I don't explain it all, but it was definitely dropping into another realm, and someone appeared there. Oh, you. Um, didn't answer your question very well, but Hui Ning. I don't know if it was him, but it is uh, actually, it's actually Dharma, I believe. Nirmanakaya is Sangha. Dharmakaya is Buddha. Let's see if it says on this page right here. Yeah, I don't remember. There's also sometimes some books, I think it is one of Longchenpa's, but I remember opening it and read the four names of the titles, and one of them is Purifying Confusion into Wisdom. Oh, okay. Close book. So you can pick up things that way too. The other, I guess, being in the Sambhogakaya, the other thing now that I is these ancient teachings. like the Heart Sutras been passed down for a long time now. And uh, these teachings aren't limited by time, and they come through as an energy field. And uh, that's Sambhogakaya, I believe. That there's a famous example of one of the, he was the first, but Gaurav Dorje is heavy in Dzogchen teachings, and that book is great. It's Gaurav Dorje achieved rainbow body, and from the sky, just before he departed, he threw down 3 golden letters to his disciples. There was half a dozen, 5 maybe, and they were extremely advanced practitioners, and they were able to understand what he sent. And then it's laid out uh, by other contemporary teachers, explaining it more and more and more, like opening it further and further and further. Um, it's a good read, actually, explains a lot of things. But all of those kind of teachings, like that image of him passing something down as he dissipates into elemental light, all these teachings from Shakyamuni Buddha, from these other streams, are like, where are they now? You know, they were spoken, they were practiced, and now available still to us. Sometimes you read them and it kind of, you go, whoa, because it has energy. That, I think, is Sambhogakaya realm. And then another example is Huineng Yang, when he passes the riddle test, the understanding poem, and is given the robe and the bowl, and the 5th ancestor who says, run, because everybody's going to want that. And so he heads off, and a general, I think it is, catches up with him, and Huineng puts the things down on a rock, and he can't lift them. One version of it, anyway. But then the general realizes, he says, I don't actually want that. I want the true teaching. So they become teacher and student with that. That kind of energy in the robe is Sambhogakaya, because wearing a okesa is, it's not, it's just like a representation of what it actually is. This warp and weft of that cloth is Sambhogakaya. Anything else? Okay. Thank you for your inputs.